Hello and welcome to the Tower Coffee Hour. This is your host, Preston or Tyree, and we've got a special meeting coming up in the community for the PIAC, or the Planned Implementation Advisory Commission, and they're going to talk about the Master Development Agreement, and they're going to have both Catellus and the City of Austin talking about it. So we're expecting some big things because this is a special call meeting, and we hope that it happens. Let's see what's going on.
Good evening. This special call meeting of the Robert Miller Municipal Airport Plan Implementation Advisory Commission is called to order at 6:04 p.m. on Tuesday, April the 30th, 2024. We're meeting at Austin Energy headquarters. Present in person are Commissioners Clements, Briner, Nider, Lukey, Hilliard, Sokolik, Ravoniak, and Jones. And present online are Commissioners Rosenat and Riddell. The first item on our agenda is public communications. This is an opportunity for anyone to provide up to 3 minutes of testimony on any topic related to the Miller development that is not on today's agenda. And so far, no one has signed up for public communications. Next, we'll move on to the only agenda item for this meeting. All of the same rules that apply at the special call meeting as would apply during a regular meeting. This is a discussion item. It means that there will be presentations by both city and Catellus staff. There will be questions from commissioners and an opportunity for up to 3 minutes of testimony by any interested member of the public. The two persons making presentations this evening are Pam Hefner on behalf of the City of Austin and Greg Weaver on behalf of Catellus. And so I'll leave it up to you guys to decide who goes first.
Good evening, Commissioners. We have a little presentation that we put together for you. This is an update of the Master Development Agreement and our progress. So let's get it going. It's not very long. So this is our agenda. We're going to review some of our history and goals. I know we have at least a few new commissioners, and give an update on our program.
Get some more volume.
Just hold it closer.
Hold it closer.
Hello. Yeah. I hear the echo. Update on the development numbers and how those have changed. Achievements, remaining work to complete, and we'll have a staff recommendation that we'll be looking for your feedback on, and our timeline.
Want me to take this?
Sure.
Yeah. So, and most of you know this, but just for any new commissioners, I'm not going to go through all of this. But this, you know, we always like to talk about the history of this, and there's some people in the room here. Commissioner Ravoniak and Dr. Kenny, who's here. There may be others. Those are the two I know for sure who all the way back to the 80s started working on a plan when the airport was announced, or not even announced, was rumored to be relocated. And so you go through all of this, you know, in the 80s, there was the beginning of community involvement planning. And then really in the 90s, in kind of the mid to late 90s, is when the planning effort in earnest on what you see today, you know, what's developed today. From 96 all the way up until 2000, and that's when a Miller plan was adopted by the City Council. And then ultimately, through an RP process, Catellus, our firm, was selected as the developer in 2002. And for those of you that I don't know, that's actually, when I came on board, I relocated here in 2002 and have worked on the project really from the get-go on behalf of Catellus, opened our office here. And then a key date on here is 2004. We actually executed, the city and Catellus executed the Master Development Agreement in December of 2004. And then we started going. And I won't go through all these major milestones because many of you have lived it, seen it, been a part of it. And it's, for us, I think, and, I think for the city and the community, it's been a huge success over the last 2 decades that I've worked on Mueller. Let's go to the next slide. I think that interesting part of this, and this is from the planning, kind of the planning principles, and again, with some of the people who are here today who've worked on it forever, the zoning and the master plan, be it this new urban master plan, really afforded the opportunity, and there was community encouragement to increase the density along the way. And when the plan was initially done, there was a certain level of density, residential, commercial, and then as the market progressed, as the market acceptance, a lot of different things in Austin happened, it allowed for the density to increase. And it's funny, I've been in this meeting here before where we had commissioners and community members asking us to even push the density even farther and farther, which for a developer is very unusual for a community to push for higher density. And we'll get to this kind of a conclusion of where we are, but at the end of the day, the residential started, when we got the MDA approved in 2002, there was 4,600 units planned. Upon completion, we're going to be close to 7,000 units. With that, you get all the additional affordable housing, so there's, almost 600 more affordable houses that, will evolve out of this. And again, I'm not going to read every number off of the slide here. There's, 16,000 residents. Same thing on the commercial front, from, 4 million to 4.8 million square feet of commercial. The green building, you can see all the green building, like everybody should be super proud about the green building. And then the parks and open space, over time, through adding density and some of the replanning, it allowed for actual additional open space along the way, where the initial goals of the plan were 140 acres that we'll be finishing off the plan at 144 acres. We can go to the next slide. And again, I'm not going to go off, this is kind of a lot of you know this, but a few key things on here. There's to date still 25 acres of land that's undeveloped. There's some open space, there's some residential land, there's different components of what's undeveloped today. A financial milestone for the city finance side, initially when this was planned, the economic forecast was $1 billion of new tax base, but the beauty of the increased density and everything else, the tax base is over doubled. MWBE participation, huge success to date. We're about $52 million in MWBE contracts that have been let to date. I went through affordable housing, people living here, gone through the open space. The open space, and this is relevant today, that there's 127 acres of the 144 acres that are complete today. And you guys will, just living here, being around here, you'll see there's a number of parks that are actually under construction at this time. And again, relevant to the, the bigger conversation that we're gonna have. Obviously, Miller's become a destination for many, many different things. In the town center, we like to, there was a goal of having local independent businesses. And in the master development agreement, it was for the town center only, which now we call the Aldridge Street District, where today we're at 77% of local businesses in the Aldridge Street District. And overall in Miller, the math is 59% of businesses are small business. And that was never a goal in the development agreement, but it's been an effort working with the city and the community. And you know all the major employers, so I won't go through that. So let's go through the next. So remaining incomplete, one of the, when the development agreement was done, it was a 20-year agreement, but the agreement was a lot of time spent on how you start the project, what happens through the life of the project. What it never really contemplated is how you end the project. And really that's why we're here today, because all of a sudden as we're getting to the end of the project, and many of you have been involved, whether it's transition committees or whatever else, all of a sudden on the development side with the relationship with the city and what we're doing, it's not like all of a sudden a certain date comes and it stops and we go away. And again, that's why we're here today. All of a sudden there's like an aha moment. There's a whole bunch of things that are not finished, that needed to be funded and everything else. And so that's what we're going to dig into a little bit. So, two of the parks, I mentioned two of the parks. The funding, construction, completion of the parks are all underway. One of the things we discovered, and again, kind of unknown with the development agreement, the way the funding works, where we fund it, then where we get reimbursed, there's a lag time that happens. And enough time to like submit invoices. It's more detailed than y'all can know, but there's a process of submitting invoices, getting reimbursed, and the way things work. Well, all of a sudden, if we have to stop, is it December 4th, our date? 2nd, December 2nd, I added 2 days. All of a sudden, we run into a technical window where we have to stop funding things in August of this year, which all of a sudden, it was kind of an unintended consequence because no one really knew how this thing would all finish. There's a number of tracks, specifically there's the high density track that is quite a number of affordable units that today is not under contract. We're talking to 3 or 4 different groups about actually going under contract and developing them. So there's that's to be completed. The third bullet point on here is about unsold property. There's still some unsold property parcels that are out there today that won't be completed and closed on by December 2nd. The district garage parking, the garages in the town center, those were developed in partnership with the city, and there needs to be a long-term plan. Who owns it, how they operate it, who gets to use it, and there's been a lot of things that are set up in place, but once we're gone, Catellus is gone, there needs to be a long-term game plan. And does the city own it? Does the city operate it? So there's a lot of technical things that go into that. And then the property owner, go ahead, Pam.
Well, and
It's working, you're on.
it's not like we didn't know all this was happening. So we are in lots of conversations with certain city departments about the parking garages and thinking on direction. We knew that 2 of the major parks had been run into permitting issues and delays from adjacent development, that they were going to take longer than December 2nd. I mean, likely it was going to be very close, and if you get any rain, and of course fall is our rainy season, it would push it over. And so we had already started working on a separate scope for Catellus to do the park, to finish the parks out. But I think the thing that really hit us hard was when we realized there was no mechanism to repay Catellus after December 2nd. And so, and not just for the parks, but for any consultant, for your Jim Adams and your traffic consultants and your everything else. And so when that hit Catellus and the city, at the same time, we were like, okay, this is not going to work. This other scope that we were going to take to council is not going to work.
Yeah, and on here, there's a laundry list of things that are not on this list. We tried to highlight some big things. But like when a building gets built, we as master developer do all the approvals on the design, and then we also help to manage the new construction council, which is the architectural review committee. Well, there's buildings that are just breaking ground, like behind here, that they're 2.5 years out before they're completed, and part of our job is to kind of hold the feet to the fire of the vertical developer to make sure they build, get complete, that they build it the way it's designed, and that's something we do in partnership with the city. That's just another example that there was just a laundry list of things that, again, 20 years ago we didn't think about it, how do you just end it? And it's also, and I would actually, it's kind of a side story. I told the folks city this. I've been at Catellus 24 years. We've been around for almost 40 years. And I called around all my partners around the country. I'm like, who has ever finished a 700-acre project and brought it to completion? And I have people of my company who've been there 30, 35 years, nobody raised their hand. Like it's one of these rare kind of unicorns of development, and that you kind of wrap it up from the beginning to end. So again, it was just kind of, the good news is the project is, been so successful and everything else, it's taken a little bit longer. And then lastly, the last bullet point on here I know is it's a big topic of conversation about the Property Owners Association. What we're going to try to do is hand the Property Owners Association over to the Property Owners Association at the end of this year. So complete that this year. I think another thing we realize as we've been talking through the transition committee and talking to residents and commercial property owners is it's super complicated. There's all kinds of moving parts. So what this also allows is the control of the Property Owners Association to go to the property owners, but Catellus is going to be around as a resource to kind of weave and like help and, you know, just point people and show how things work, and frankly help if there's going to be transitions of certain things. There's a lot for those of you on the transition committee that are going to go on. And again, us just going away in December, all of a sudden it was like, you know, we're dealing with insurance and hail and managers and all kinds of things that have been, you know, ongoing things where we felt like, hey, hand the property association over to the association, to the board, to the property owners, but we're not going anywhere. And yeah, all right, I'm getting shushed on now. Why is it taking longer? So, you know, there's lots of reasons why, and as we looked at it, is that the one slide that shows the increase densification, we just added more program over time, but never added time to the development agreement, so we've had more program. We had the global financial crisis, the GFC, you know, which was one of the worst recessions since the Depression. And we were lucky to continue to kind of keep the lights on and develop small little bits and pieces, but we hit that. We obviously just came out of the pandemic, which was kind of a scary time, and things were very unstable. And then the current market conditions, for any of you that are in the financial market or whatever else, with interest rates up and costs up because of COVID, most projects, vertical projects, are coming to a halt right now, and throughout the United States. It's not an Austin thing, it's not a Central Texas. So also we're hitting it. So there's various reasons why it's taking longer. I think the good news is because we have more density and everything else, it's not like there's any less of any one thing out here, it's just taking longer. So I'm gonna hand it to Pam.
So we are recommending to, and I've already recommended city manager, and we'll be asking council to consider extending the MDA for 2 years. And that would basically just change the expiration date to December 31st, 2026. And then some other minor changes just to support that change in time. There's property takedowns that require road running through your average, and we'll adjust that. There's one of the things that we discovered was that the final project accounting was extremely unrealistic. It's like nobody really worried about the end of this thing. And so our economic consultant suggests we make some changes to the number of days that the final pro forma gets submitted to the city, because we have to agree to it. And then there'll be administrative fees will be given both to the city and Catellus to continue that work that needs to be done. And we will take this to council on May 30th. And as you may be aware, the PIAC is tied to the expiration of the MDA. So if the MDA is extended, then this group would continue. Did I say that?
Smiles.
Well, I didn't know if it would be yay or. So I think this last one is just, oh, here's the timeline. This is April 30th right now. Brian will put together an update in the Mueller newsletter on May 3rd, so we can try to inform people. Then you all will have a May 14th meeting where we will post and ask for action. Since you're advisory to city council, and we will be taking something to council. And then May 30th is the council meeting.
Commissioners, I anticipate you might have a few questions. We'll start with Rick and work our way around to it.
So is the city council aware of this? Or are we gonna surprise them?
Well, some of them are. But that's what, when they see the agenda item, we will offer also to visit with them one-on-one if they have any questions.
Dave?
Could we go back to the list of proposed changes for the MDA?
Okay.
No, that's not that one.
Oh, did I go?
Yeah, you went one too far. There you go, right there. I figure ultimately this is what we're going to be, essentially making a recommendation on, and so I'm not sure I have a question quite yet, but I want to read the list and then I'll probably have a question. So I'll pause and see if anyone else has a question.
Commissioners, other questions? Yes, Andrew.
So I am curious about the history of Catellus at Stapleton. Did you not have some kind of finalization of the redevelopment of the airport?
Well, we did 300 acres of 4,700 acres, and it was primarily industrial. We get a lot of credit for the big Stapleton, and we were not the overall master developer of all Stapleton. It was 300 acres, and this is more of a history lesson of Catellus. We actually sold the Prologis way back when, an industrial REIT, and they kept that, and then when we spun back out, that was not part of our project.
Wasn't it Forest Hill?
Forest City.
Forest City.
Forest City was the master developer of, that's now owned by Brookfield, and it's still underdeveloped. They haven't finished that project, and 4,700 acres, it's still going.
Probably just.
Yeah, probably.
On the, can I ask the reset calculation of annual required property takedowns? I guess you're saying you're pushing that back, the required takedowns.
Yeah, because it was 61 acres per year, which doesn't make a lot of sense when you're doing the density that we're doing now. So we always kick ourselves because everyone who came to Miller, we want 20 acres. And so we would say, you can't think in terms of acres, you need to think in terms of square feet because we want to go up and we want to have a small footprint. And then here we made a stupid mistake and did acres on the takedowns. And as we got denser, and at first it was not a problem, but then as you get into the town center, it's, an acre of land in the town center is enormous. So that's a lesson learned. We would never put that in an agreement again.
Yes, Corky.
Hi, thank you for this. The issues kind of have been coming forward about some of these, and it was clear it was a complicated situation. On the remaining work, I have a question. You go back to that slide. It's about it was called remaining work. It was about the 2 key parks. Yeah. So point 2, can you talk a little bit about the issue around the remaining delivery of the affordable units? What the plan is there? And is 2 years enough?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the biggest parcel is the piece of land next to where Foundation Communities is, next, I call it the Octopus Park. I know that's not the right name, but that's the name I like. And there's that tract of land there, and that's been designated, we call it the high-density site, and we've, for years, have talked to a number of different groups about developing that site. We were in a lot of discussions 2 years ago, and then when the interest rates went up, it all went quiet on us. The good news is we actually have 3 different groups today that we're actually talking to, and there are 3, they all have an affordability component. They're all very different in kind of their ideas and plans. So we feel confident right now. I think it's a good question. Like, is there an absolute, in 2 years, is it all going to get done? I'd love to say absolutely, but I can't say that today. Just with, with interest rates being up right now, it's just hard to have vertical development, buildings going up. Homes are going up, and homes are still selling, so the residential market isn't, I mean, it's slowed down, but it's not as hit as bad as like commercial real estate. And, when you say multifamily and higher density residential, that fits in that commercial real estate bucket of real estate finance, and you're really driven by interest rates. The good news is there are 3 active groups that are actually working with architects, planning on it right now, looking at different concepts for it.
And there's also about at least 5 affordable homes in the other sections.
Right, on the single family lots,
Yeah.
that's correct. Yeah, in section 11.
That probably wouldn't be sold until after.
Well, and let me just add one other thing on the affordable housing, even like this right here behind us, the I think it's behind us, the big hole in the ground, that's plus or minus, I forget how many units, like 640 units of apartments. 15% of the units are multifamily. So again, part of our job is to make sure that these projects get completed, that the affordable housing, the apartments and the multifamily gets delivered too. So it's more than just these additional parcels, it's making sure projects like this get executed. And then part of it, and again, this was not on the sheet of work to do, we're working diligently with the Mueller Foundation, with the city, with city housing, to make sure that the affordable housing, and I know this is a question that's come up here a lot, that there's a good long-term plan for both the for sale and for rent. And we feel like there is, but it's not all buttoned up yet. There's a whole bunch of things that every member of the city and us are working on today to make all that happen.
Next up, Kathy, and then Dave and Richard.
So my question kind of follows on that a little bit. As part of the commission transition committee, I just want to make sure it's okay that we continue our work, because we're digging into so many issues that this is fantastic that we have time to work it out. So many questions that we don't have answers for yet. So I just want to make sure we're okay keeping on going.
Yeah, because I'll just interject. The transition issues don't go away. It's just a question of the timeline. Do you have a little more time? All of the stakeholders to work through some of those issues. And then Dave?
Yeah, just the tag team, I don't Paul, Kathy said. The idea to make sure that it's clear that maybe this, that this isn't the limit. Obviously, just because we're extending the MBA, it's sort of, I think it feels like the doors are just open, but there are other things we're exploring, and it seems like the list here, maybe there could be things added potentially of things that might need to be added into the scope of what's left to do. So.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate, there's the spreadsheet is long of all the different things that are, and I like coming in here today, I thought about the new construction council, the affordable housing, when I mentioned the parking garage, the transition with the POA. I mean, and we've heard through the various transition committees, internally ourselves with the city, it's a long list of things. So it's not limited to what's on the list here. There's all kinds of things that need to be finalized, wrapped up. And that's, again, where I think for us, frankly, it was probably at the end of last year, and we attending these meetings like this is getting overwhelming. It's like, wow, there's so much to go do. And there was this looming date of December 2nd of 2024, and it was a date 20 years ago we all agreed to, and then it was like, wow, there's a whole bunch of stuff. So the good news is there's no issues or problems. It's just it's a cleanup list. It's like a big thing that, there's development activities that need to get done, but then there's just closing out everything, getting things done. And so by the time we go away, there's a nice bow around everything.
Yeah, we might have a couple things at your list, we'll see. If we can. Obviously, we're not, we don't completely control that. But other question I was going to ask is, I was just kind of looking at your total, your plan for affordables, and then I guess I didn't expect another big affordable project in the neighborhood. Is this like a LIHTC project that you're looking at, or?
We don't know, that's what I was saying, there's 3 different proposals with 3 different concepts right now, so we're not sure. Light tech, we're not sure what it's gonna be at this point.
But primarily.
We've talked to nonprofits, we've talked to, no, it's gonna be mixed income. I mean, there's gonna be a mix of homes on there.
Okay.
That'll have market rate and affordable units on it.
Okay, then Richard and then Courtney.
Yeah, Kate, can we get a copy of these?
The slides?
Yeah, these slides emailed to us, you know, not necessarily right this second, but at the end of the meeting.
Yes, I can email them to the commissioners. They will also be posted online on the commission's website.
Okay, that'll be good. Now, yeah, I think I saw a slide that said you want to extend this out to 2026. Are you sure that's long enough? I mean, I've watched people build stuff, and considering the amount of, and granted, I'm new on this, so maybe you guys move faster. But 2026 doesn't seem...
Not enough.
I think, so, it's a great question. We looked at the list, and it wasn't a magic, there wasn't science to it, but we're like, it's 2.5 years from today, right? And so we're like, can we get all this, if we put our head down, and there's some stuff out of our control, like the market and all that, so, kind of set that aside, and hopefully interest rates come down, things settle down a little bit. But all the other things, frankly, it's probably focus on, making sure we have all the issues, we understand all the issues, and we have lawyers and accountants and all these people where it's like getting all these things done and making sure that it's done right. So it seems like a long time right now is, it's hard to say.
Well, when you said lawyers, that automatically says 2 more years.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is that 2026 may sit down, and that may sound good, but if someone asked me what my opinion is, mine would be, say, 2028, and if you wrap it up early, just, throw a pizza party and sign the final thing and wrap it up early.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, then you have to go through a lot of stuff again in order to go through the extension process, which is going to be a real pain. But if you just pencil in 2028 now, or 27, or I don't know, whatever it is you want, then, it's done, and you've got that extra time added in there. And, it's easier to set a date just a year or 2 out as a padding, and then if you're done earlier, hey, great. If that's just an observation, because no construction project I've ever worked on.
Yeah, that language is in there, if the final property is taken down, and it can end earlier. So that language is already in there.
Okay. Then my final question has to do with, are we just talking about, by and large, moving the date out? I know there's some details in there that you've referred to about this, that, and the other thing. But we're not really changing the details of the MDA at all. We're just saying status quo with the MDA. By the way, we're kicking it out X number of years in order to allow us to wrap it up, put a bow on it, and throw a, going away party or something like that. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing. We're not going to...
Yeah, we're not opening up the MDA, changing terms.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is there's an expiration date that says December 2nd, 2024, and that gets pushed back 2 years. A few of the other items on there are, kind of technical things, but that's what it is. And our obligations, our responsibilities are all the same. Everything stays the same.
Okay. Thank you.
Corky.
Thank you. I was looking at the remaining work list, and you've really identified all of them we thought about. The one that wasn't anywhere in here was the UT track. So is that done? Is that not remaining? What's going on?
No, I'll just say that the city, along with Catellus, is in discussions with UT about getting that, move it or give it back.
Yeah.
So we're in monthly discussions with them.
Great,
And
thank you.
we have asked them to come and talk to you.
Thank you. Good.
Michael, this is Ken. I don't know if you see that.
Yes,
I'm trying to ask some questions.
yes, Ken, go right ahead.
Thank you. First of all, Greg and Pam, thank you very much for bringing this forward to the commission. I think one of the first things that I am curious about, from a financial standpoint, the project has been very successful. With this extension of time and resource requirements that Catellus will need to continue to work on, how does that affect the overall financial status of the project? Has that been evaluated? What, if it's a negative impact, what things are being done to mitigate it?
It would be a positive impact because, like we said, there's no mechanism to repay Catellus. There's also no mechanism for the city to accept payment. So the things that we didn't get sold, even some of the houses where some of the money trails after the house is built, you had no way to collect it and no way where for it to go. So I think we have like a $10 million, there'll be some outflow because of the administrative fees, but also a lot of revenue coming into our funds.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for clarifying that, Pam. My second question is really around the neighborhood association, and what we've been hearing bits and pieces on is that their rates are having to go up, and that may cause things not to be as affordable as we had all hoped. Is there, since we're going to have this additional, or if we are able to have this additional time, is there factors that are being evaluated and maybe looked at, or should they be, to try to help set up the association so that it's it's not having to increase rates as much over time? And Kathy, I know this is a concern of yours. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but if I'm misrepresenting anything in my rambling statement or question, please feel free to add.
And just to clarify, I think that's probably the Property Owners Association, not the Neighborhood Association, right?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah, so it's a great question, Ken. It gives the ability, and on the Property Association, the affordable, the assessments to the affordable homeowners, we've made some adjustments already, but there's probably can be more adjustments on it. And I think, we understand, that last bullet point of where the Property Owner Association would be in the hands of the property owners. It won't be us making the decisions. Today we have this title of master declarant that we, kind of control things, and over the years residents have been on it, where we're not going to control that at the end of the year. What we're going to be is a resource more than anything, just knowing that it's a big task just to manage everything. And so, I think you're going to get the benefit of two things. You're going to get the benefit of control, which people wanted, but we're going to be the benefit of the resource to, Brian loves it. Brian continues on, but with just all the moving parts, the affordable housing component to it, just the maintenance, when you have hailstorms, just all the different things that we're not going away. You're going to have our same team to be able to be there to help and resolve all that. And the Mueller Foundation, the same thing with the Mueller Foundation, they're going to continue. I mean, they're separate from Catellus and kind of have their own independent board and all of that, but they're going to be there, for the long term also.
Okay. Appreciate that, Greg. I think the one thing to keep in mind as you hand that over, we really need a mechanism for the surrounding neighborhoods to be able to come to or tie into, that route, because there are issues. Our neighborhood gets involved and does the cleanup of the parks and things like that. So we'd like to be able to coordinate better with them in the future. And I know I'd heard that from our neighborhood as well as others, so please keep that in mind as that transition occurs. And I think the last thing I had was, and I tend to agree, 2 years is, 2.5 years seems optimistic. Would we be better setting up maybe another year or two to allow some of these final details to get worked through? Because I think having to go back to the board or to the council, city council, again, seems like a problem. But that's something, Pam, I know you've been working through, and I'll let you figure out the politics of it all. But from my perspective, I think we might be better off giving a little more flexibility and not trying to lock it down to a 2.5 year time frame, although we'd all love for that to happen. Again, thank you all very much for everything both of you have been doing on this project over the years. And it's been, I think, a positive working relationship from not only a neighborhood perspective, but from a commission perspective. So thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Josh, did you have any questions?
Kathy?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just checking to see since I was looking at it.
No, that all sounds, yeah, I mean, I was kind of wondering this as we got closer to everything. I feel like all my questions have been answered. Yeah, I mean, I feel like 2.5 might be short, but no, all my concerns were answered. I mean, if it helps get these parks done better, I'm supportive of it. I think I was kind of wondering that as I walked around, which we do pretty much every day. See a lot of things not done. If this helps fulfill the Mueller vision, that's good to know.
All right, thanks. And Kathy, your question.
I just wanted to make sure a few things were on that list. So the hangar, Miller Central, and then Charlie and Delta, are those still happening?
The plans for the buildings are pretty much complete, but just kind of the market for office buildings in this kind of work from home environment. So it's one of those ones, though, that we talked to Shorenstein's, the developer who did the Alpha Bravo building, and we talked to him on a regular basis, but just with the market right now, there's nothing anytime imminent. I think there was something in the newspaper probably 6 months ago, and it was because somebody saw a rendering of it and thought it was kind of a groundbreaking, but that was
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's designs for it.
yeah, there's designs.
It's already come to NCC and been approved.
And the other things are on the list. Yes. Okay, thanks.
Yes, Corky.
Since Ken brought up money, and this is a bit tangential, does this impact the TIF at all, this extension?
No.
Okay, but is it true the TIF ends in 32?
Well,
I mean, is that the end date for the TIF?
I think that's when the debt service is all
Yeah,
paid.
I recall that.
But the city would have options
Yeah.
to whether to close it. Because it's served its purpose.
Yeah, and it's been very productive, highly productive. Is the money earned by the TIF, does that go into the general fund? After the debt service is repaid?
Well, it would, I mean, after yeah. Do you want to? We have the expert.
This question keeps coming up, what's the TIF? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Olivares. I'm Deputy CFO. I just happened to be in the room. And the services are in my purview. So at this, all the funds that are sitting in, that have come from the TERS can only be used for the purposes defined in the project financing plan. So all that is in there right now must go towards debt service and nothing else, not the general fund. If we close the TERS, again, I mean, we still have outstanding debt until 2032, so it would go towards that. If there's anything remaining, there is just a process that council goes by to determine how it wants to direct it. They did a similar thing with the Seahome TERS, which we closed last year.
last year. So there's no designation right now for any surplus amount of money that would be available at the end after the debt service?
No, not at this time. All funds are dedicated towards debt service.
Okay. Thank you.
Andrew?
Well, since the UT tract was mentioned, there's another large tract, the 8-acre tract that.
Louder?
51st, that has been taken down, but in the anticipation of teachers' retirement system coming there. Do you have any update for the 8 acres?
Yeah, no, there's no, yeah, great question, and that was, we were here right before COVID, like weeks before the world came to an end with TRS. That's where TRS's corporate headquarters were gonna go. And then COVID happened and they went to the Alpha Bravo building. We have a number of different groups we've talked to there, but it's the capital markets also. We've had senior housing groups, we've had assisted living groups, we've had, probably more in that vein than in office today, just with the office environment, and that zoning allows for that. But there's nothing eminent today.
Commissioners, other questions? Yes, Mark?
Thank you. It's great to have you all in here, and I have one thing I've been wondering about regarding the affordable housing program. And it's the number of what I would call family residences, something that would be in the range of 3-bedroom places, or larger for that matter. And I'm wondering what percentage of it would be in that category that you've got planned?
Are you referring to the new ones?
Yeah, the ones that have not been completed.
I don't have that. Well, on the one track we're talking about, because there's 3 different groups looking at them, they're looking at 3 different, there's one that's probably more, let's say, probably more family friendly. And then there's ones more that would be more singles and couples, things like that. And so we don't have one group that's designated as at this time. The apartments behind us here, those are going to be, probably not so family, being apartments, but on the kind of the high density tract, that one is the one that would be have the ability to be more family friendly.
And that's the only one that's left to be done?
There's a couple lots, as Pam mentioned, there's 5 lots that would be more 3 bedrooms that would allow for families to be in them, so they're bigger units. But that would be the lion's share of it.
Right, thank you.
Dave?
I guess just on the theme of, let's imagine, I think Richard brought up a good point. We hit the end of whatever the extension is, assuming it becomes an extension, and there's still something to do. So what is the game plan then? I mean, I suppose the game plan could be to extend again, but is there not, it sounds like you guys are working on a mechanism to have a separate agreement or a separate contract. Would that become a possibility if there was still work to be done after the MBA closed? Like what's plan B if we don't hit the end?
I guess it depends on how much is left. Like when we were putting the scope together, it started getting bigger and bigger when, first it was just going to be parks, and it was kind of a relief when we thought, after many years of saying to Catellus, no, we will not extend the MBA, you have to get it all done. Then, it just seemed that it was a relief, and because there was so much to do. So I think if it's a smaller scope, it could be no separate contract.
Commissioners, other questions? Yes, Rick?
To back up on the 8 acres at Berkman and 51st, I can't pull up a good illustrative plan, but it shows that it's mixed-use commercial, I think, is that the designation? That allows residential uses?
Yeah, the mixed-use residential allows for multifamily, no single family. It's more density related, but it's commercial. It's commercial, but multifamily is included in that.
Okay, good to know. And that's a really important corner to me personally, because the one across the street was, if you recall that. So do something good there.
We will. That other corner has your name on it, because
Yes, Dave?
Can we go back to the slide again with the things left, or what was it?
Yeah, things left to do.
Not the things left to do, it's the changes to the MDA amendments, I guess.
Oh, sorry.
There we go, that's it. So the last one about the fees, so I assume that Catellus is getting paid to, how do I say this? Like, you're getting, if you did not, I don't want to say if you did nothing, because that's not the, I don't want to imply that, but like, you're getting paid something from the city, I don't know, every month or something to do your job, essentially, regardless of sort of how much gets done, is that correct? And so, in terms of when we're talking about those fees are being adjusted, what does that actually mean? Does that mean they're being adjusted down because there's like less scope, or?
So this is a second thing that didn't work well in the MDA, and it has to do with acres as well. So we have administrative fees. The city gets an administrative fee, and Catellus gets an administrative fee, because for many years there was no income at all to anybody. And so there's a mechanism in the MDA that as the acreage is reduced, so is the administrative fee for both. Well, you know, as it became more dense, it's way more complicated as we get to the end. And so the administrative fee was reduced to about nothing. Plus there's been no increase in it in 22 years or whatever. So we're going to go back to the original, the administrative fees that for 90% of the project prevailed.
So does that also help fund city staff to?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, well, I don't know, we can ask. It was intended to help fund.
To help the budget earmark. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's it for me, thanks.
Commissioners, other questions? Oh, yes, Andrew.
With your other large development, I mean, you're going to have the very large development further east. Is this just double taxing your abilities?
No, you know what, it's a great question, Andrew. I think it's kind of a unique situation. Frankly, some of the people in the room here at the city are going to.
Can we get some clarity on what's being referred to?
Oh, are you referring to Conley Park?
Yes.
Yeah. It is, a lot of people in the room at the city and a lot of people at Catellus are working on this, and it's almost like, you know, the ramp up is a lot of work on Conley Park, so like we are, you know, hopefully going to be going to council here in the next month or two, and that's going to be done, and ramping up on this, but at the same time going to be, you know, on the, hopefully, landing on Miller over the next 2 years. So I think from a staffing standpoint, I mean, we internally talk about it, what do we need staffing-wise to make sure that we adequately staff for Miller, but then we also adequately staff for the ramp up of Conley Park. So it's something we evaluate closely.
Commissioners, other questions? Yes, Rick.
So this may be one last sort of procedural thing. So this is a staff recommendation. Does that mean that you will write it and bring it to us at the next meeting?
We can, I guess. I mean, I think, I don't know.
Got another
We
expert.
may be able to talk about this off or work that out between now and our May meeting.
I mean, it could be really simple.
Okay, I mean, that's a procedural thing that I had to write one or two, I think, along the way. I really don't want to do it again. So, yeah, this is something that you know way more about than we do. And so I think the technical
before
wording
that
is critical, and that it coming from staff, I mean, that's what it says, staff is recommending this extension, so that would be my preference unless there's some other sentiment on the commission, but.
I think when you guys approved the MDA, there was, I looked at it the other day, and there was some language in there about as staff has presented it. Because, you know, you probably haven't read every page of the MDA. So if that, something like that might be appropriate.
Yes, Corky.
It's just a comment. I want to thank you for this. It really is helpful to see it all in one place. It's sort of been an octopus to deal with, and it's very helpful. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions?
Commissioner Jones.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Jill.
Sorry. I just wanted to go back, if it's okay, and I wanted to make a couple of follow-up comments. And going back to a question that Commissioner Sokolic had in the beginning about the work of the transition working group that's happening right now with the commission. With the clerk's office right now, we have a 1-year commitment to the working groups. But given the nature of the work that we're talking about and the timing and the whole nature of the request for the extension to allow more time for the transition work, we as staff can follow up on this, but we think it would be appropriate just to do another vote to extend that when the time is right. But we'll follow up with the clerk's office to make sure procedurally we're handling that correctly. Along that same vein, and Pam, Greg, please feel free to add in here, we also believe that that will be, you know, allowing more time for this commission and the transition working group and for there to be more community involvement overall regarding the completion and the transition. And then secondly, we will follow up on the process for what recommendation. I mean, knowing that this item is going to council, we feel strongly as staff that it is appropriate for this commission to weigh in on it, but we will also work on the appropriate mechanism and vehicle.
Thank you.
Yes, Corky.
There'll also be some work to be done regarding extension of some of the commission members' terms, because we did a 1-year extension beyond our term limits. All that has to be worked through to the clerk's office. Just FYI.
Yeah, that. Any other questions, commissioners? All right. I have just a couple, and they may be more procedural than anything else. One is, you'd mentioned plans for the transition of the POA to a majority homeowner would continue, but of course, with this extension, Catellus will still be here doing its work. How unusual a situation is that where you have basically a fully active POA, but also the master developer is still working, and how do you work with a POA under those situations?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've not done it, so I don't know. Like, I don't have a great answer. You know, to me, it's almost, I don't know, Brian, you know, who has to deal with POA a lot, would agree with this. I almost think it's, and my guess is some of you may not agree with this, but I think what we've tried to do is listen and hear and make adjustments and tweaks to the documents and to what we do. And I think, you know, the change will be, it's not going to be our decisions, it's going to be the property owner's decisions. And I think we can be helpful, like, hey, we've studied this, we've looked at this, you got to talk to this lawyer, or if you want to look at different managers, hey, here's things. These are discussions we've had. Do you self-manage? Do you have a continuing manager like you do? So I think it's going to be one that, again, we're not going anywhere, so we're going to kind of be doing a lot of the same things from a resource standpoint, but it's more probably advisory work than it is today, where we're technically the board. So that probably doesn't answer your question directly, but again, we haven't done this before, so we're going to put it together with y'all.
Good. Be a learning experience for everybody. The second question I have, and probably Greg, maybe you're in a better position to speculate. You mentioned that because of high interest rates, there's been it's had a big negative impact on commercial development. I don't have any insight into what the Federal Reserve Board would do, but let's speculate a little and say maybe they don't make the 2 rate cuts that were expected this year. Maybe it somehow drags into 2025. If we don't get a reduction in interest rates and therefore that frees up development, if that didn't happen, let's say until spring, summer of next year, would you still be comfortable with the 2-year extension? Or 2.5-year extension?
Yeah, I think that's the unknown. I think the Fed's meeting later this week, and maybe today, or tomorrow. I think I don't have the answer to that 100%. You know, and I wrote the notes down of kind of if it goes longer, and you know, maybe we can talk to the city about coming up with a mechanism where, like Pam said, that maybe there's just another contract where hopefully a whole bunch of things are done, but there's still some outstanding things that there's kind of an amended scope of work or something like that, and maybe the parties can mutually agree to extend and do something like that. So there may be a way to do it. It's funny, it sounds like a long time out, and as you guys all say this, I'm like, oh, maybe you're right. But we're, until 2 weeks ago, or last week, when inflation ticked up, we as a company, and you know, we do stuff around the United States and talk to a lot of different people, we were still hopeful interest rates were going to come down, and then when inflation went the wrong way, we're not so optimistic about it. So I think it's one of those things, and Andrew made a point that we're going to be working on Colony Park, which is a 10 to 15-year project. Like, I think from Catellus' perspective, and my personal perspective, I'm not going anywhere. Like, we're going to be here. So if all of a sudden we're here in 2.5 years and there's still things not done, you know, hopefully we're going to have another 13 years with the city on Colony Park, and we're still going to be around doing things. So we don't just vanish.
And the last question I had was, can you kind of paint a picture with words for us about, let's say we're getting into the fall of 2026, which goes by fast. What would the completion actually look like? I'm assuming most of the property would have been developed by then, but it's possible there could still be a few lots, and hopefully our friends at the 40 acres will take some action on their very sizable lot. But so what steps actually would the Catellus and the city undertake to actually finish the project?
Probably both of us answering that. I think from our standpoint, from Catellus' perspective, you know, the development's all done. Like, all the parks, all the open space, all the infrastructure, everything's done. Ideally, every parcel is sold and either under construction or built. So all of that is done. And then from you know, the district parking garages we talked about, we have a clear path for the district parking garages. The POA is all set where we don't need to be an advisor or be a part of it. So there's a smooth transition for the POA. And then from the business side with the city, all of this, the accounting, as Pam was talking about, and the financing and everything, there's just a bow around that, where there's kind of a final of everything, where at the end of the day, there's just no loose ends. And everything, they kind of dot the I across the T, and right now, you know, as we just went through, there's just a whole bunch of loose ends right now that are just not, you know, not completed at this point.
Thank you. We've been trying to figure out kind of, as Pam was pointing out, there are a lot of loose ends now. We're kind of figuring out, well, what does it look like? And it was like, because obviously we weren't there yet. So, yes, Mark.
I was curious about what kind of contractor agreement exists with the University of Texas at the moment. Is there something that has a timestamp on it regarding that land? And
there's a lease.
There's
They're
a lease,
not
so they're paying for
fulfilling the
that land?
obligations of their lease, but they are not in default.
They paid it up front.
They paid the lease up front? They did, I'm sorry. Okay, I get it.
Any other questions? Yes, Richard.
You mentioned that development is being delayed or postponed based upon economic issues, specifically the interest rates that people have to pay in order to finance all this sort of fun stuff. What interest rate do you see to be optimal to get things moving again? I know 0 is really good, but
2%? I don't know.
well, I mean,
It's a great question. So it's a long answer, and I won't give it all. But there's always kind of a mix of where interest rates are, and then rents, right? Like for multifamily, there's a dynamic in Austin and a few cities around the United States where a whole bunch of apartments got built during COVID, and so rents right now are starting to go down in multifamily because there's an abundance of a number of units that are under construction and being built right now. But there's this dynamic that everyone's predicting in a year or two, if interest rates come down, and except for this project here and a few others in the city, there's no new construction projects starting. So all of a sudden, in a couple of years, there's going to be a shortage of apartments. And then rents start spiking up, and hopefully interest rates go down and construction costs go down. And then you have kind of that secret sauce of the formula that all of a sudden these projects are financeable. But you need a couple levers to move a couple different directions to make it all work.
Well, I understand the dynamics of the housing market and how the fact the Fed's not going to lower the interest rate before the end of the calendar year at the earliest. So I understand all that. The reason I'm really kind of asking is, if you're looking at 2.5 years out, the Fed's not going to lower the interest rate until January, or their January meeting or February, whenever the first one is after the new year, then you're not going to see interest rates drop in a meaningful way for 2 years. So this again kind of pushes it out past 2.5 years. And you know, whether or not the mechanics of how much concrete you can pour, that's one thing. But if you're also waiting on the interest rates to drop, that's a different problem. And so that again says, well, maybe we need to push it out rather than 2.5 years, maybe we need to push it out 4.5 years, because the other variable in it is the interest rates. And so we got to figure that into, and no one knows what the Fed's going to do, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to ask you when to lower the interest rate based upon your construction schedule. So that's the reason why I'm asking the question, is to encourage you to push out that date.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, that's, again, I took notes of it. The wheels are spinning, and you're right. And it's some of those factors are out of our control right now. Who knows what happens in a year or two? So I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, commissioners? All right. Well, next, we'll see if there's anyone signed up to provide testimony on this topic.
Oh, yeah.
Michael, this is Ken, just a real quick comment. I had mentioned this earlier in a past meeting, and I would think that it should be factored into the closeout, and that sort of, is there sort of a assessment being done on the condition of the infrastructure and what might need to be factored into and repaired prior to final closeout should be a consideration.
That was a question or just a comment?
It is a comment, but I think my question is, will there be any type of assessment done on the infrastructure identifying needed repairs before final closeout?
Thanks for the question, Ken.
Hey, Ken. The plan was not a final assessment. The way all the infrastructure goes in, the assessment happens a year after it's constructed, where the city takes over and, accepts right-of-way, accepts roads, sidewalks, all of that. There have been exceptions out here over the years where something happens, and we get involved. So that hasn't been something contemplated today, but just because and with all developments throughout the city of Austin, there's a process that happens already where the developer designs, builds, and then a year later to see, make sure there's no defects or whatever else.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Greg.
The first person signed up to provide 3 minutes of testimony on this topic is Gary Jacobson. And Gary, if you just come up to the, whichever mic works up there.
My name is Gary Jacobson. My wife and I moved to Mueller in 2015. We live on Wallace, next door to one of the best neighbors around, Corky. Our kids, 2 kids and 2 grandkids, also live in the neighborhood, so we got a lot involved here. We're all in. I'm very encouraged by the talk here, and I would encourage you to pass this resolution to extend the MDA. There's a lot of stuff to get done. It was my understanding, as I was investigating myself previously, that as of now, there's no plan to do an updated reserve study. Look at some of the townhouse associations and everything, and because it costs too much money. The last reserve study was done a couple of years ago. With this extension, I would hope we could get another reserve study done and have enough time to look over it and make some, make decisions on whether we are well reserved or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. The next person signed up for public testimony is Gerard Kenny.
Thank you. Gerard Kenny here. I have 3 points I'd like to make. One is that I'm always a little disappointed when I see that when the timeline is shown, a very small amount of ink is given to the period from 1984 to 1997, but an enormous amount of things happen. Neighborhoods are the ones that came up with the whole idea of Mueller, and they need to be given more credit for that in any history that's written and presented. As many of you may know, Rick Kowaliak and I were involved in the original care plan for the relocation of the airport, the Move It campaign, and we were involved in those groups, stayed together and continue to provide pressure to make not only that the airport would move, but the development that followed it would be something that served the entire city, but also the surrounding neighborhoods. And I think it was the vision that was presented by the 1995-1996 Mueller Task Force did create the vision that has been largely fulfilled. So I'd like to see, the first point is I'd like to see more verbiage given to that in presentation. The second point is that the mayor has been talking about replicating Mueller. If we're going to replicate Mueller, the important thing about that is that it needs to be a product of the neighborhoods around whatever development is where it's being replicated. And I haven't heard much about that, and that's a really very important principle. The third thing I wanted to mention is that, as many of you know, back in over 10 years ago, I was selected as the architect for the Miller Tower. I was very surprised a couple of months ago when our office got a notice that our contract was being closed out for the redevelopment of the tower. I have subsequently met with Greg Weaver about this. I understand that the primary problem was that they've been unable to find a user, a steward for that building. I understand that. I'm hoping that the 2 years extension will give a little more time to actually do that. In the meantime, I have not personally seen the plans for the park. I don't know if y'all have seen the plans for the park. It's being built. It's being built now. I had understood that we would be collaborating on whatever was built around the tower. We haven't been. So it's a real concern about how that tower district and the tower itself are going to be working together over time. And I urge you to keep that in mind as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Dan McAfee.
I think he's left.
Okay. Next is Ani Cope.
These words, I've grown accustomed to your face, have been running through my mind during this meeting. And that's a real welcoming that we're going to continue to work together to make this the best neighborhood. You know what I'm going to mention. There are a couple things that are missing. And that is a place for seniors to live so they don't have to leave their neighborhood. It's called Aging in Place. For them to live when they can't live independently. I know you've put out RPFs for that, whatever they are. Anyhow, and we have a resource we might help with that, and would like to. As Andrew presented last month at the meeting, we also are looking to have a Northeast Austin region community place. And we have also talked to Catellus about that. So these are things that are really important and dear to my heart. I would say, you know, I also think there's a park that needs to be made that's very accessible and useful for people who are getting older and stiffer and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Preston Tyree.
Ani's a hard act to follow sometimes. I have 2 points tonight. One of them relates to the numbers that I saw on the screen about the expected population of the Mueller development. I think the number was 15,600. In the last election in March, we showed over 14,000 registered voters in the 2 precincts that make up Mueller. Now there's a little bit of extra in there, but it's not enough to make that kind of a difference. So we need to re-look at those numbers, because if we've got 14,000 registered voters, we got a lot more than 15,000 already in the neighborhood. So that's one issue. And it's not going to change anything, but it would be interesting to have good numbers about what kind of population we have here. That's one. No good. Now he's getting old. He's forgotten the second point. Now the second point is timing. This building, I think you just said, Greg, that this building will be 2.5 years out. The building on the 8 acres hadn't even started yet. 26 is not a good number. And, you know, let's take a look at it or leave an opening so we can extend it. Because that is not a good number. Thank you.
Thank you, Preston.
Is there anyone else?
No. That concludes our public testimony. Commissioners, as a reminder, we'll have our regular meeting in just a couple of weeks. This topic, probably as an action item, will be on the agenda along with any other items, with some of the other items that we've already planned to include in that meeting. We'll finalize the agenda next week. That concludes our business today. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? There's a motion.
Second.
There's a second. Are there any objections to this, ending this very interesting meeting? Hearing none, meeting adjourned. Look forward to further discussing this in just a couple of weeks, and thank you all for participating.